Fellow Ghanaians, good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. So we're still focusing on our conversation on the free SHS policy. Now, yesterday we started, and from the beginning of this week, we've been talking about this on the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. Many of you have been telling us what your challenges are or the issues or concerns you have with the policy termed by many as one of the most critical social intervention programs in the country's history. Started in 2017 until the double track system was implemented in 2018. A lot of you have complained. In fact, some of you have talked about how you would prefer to be given a chance to even pay your ward school fees because you believe that the current system is stressing you financially because you would have to, pay for the extra classes fees of your wards. Now, yesterday I was telling you about how we spoke to a headmaster and he was sharing some of the concerns he had about the free SHS policy. Even this morning on the Super Morning Show, we've been speaking to a student who's been telling us the challenges. Now, before I get into today's conversation, let us start by listening to what the headmaster, whom we prefer to call Headmaster John, said about the free SHS policy. And then we also get to hear from a student before I introduce my guest for tonight's conversation. Let's listen to Headmaster John.
They tend to give us 30% for perishables. Readers in the body schools, 30% perishables. But the amount will come for you to be able to calculate it, even to know that it is 30%. So every stream, 30%. So Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. As we speak, Form 1, nothing has come. They have been to school.
Nothing has come for Form 1. They've been in school since the 18th of March. You haven't received any money?
For Form 1s. And this one, my worries for the day schools, they have nothing to rely on.
So, imagine, the message here is that if you have a child in Form 1, it's likely the government of Ghana is yet to provide money for your child's feeding under free SHS. Now, let me ask, was this the case before free SHS came along? Is this the first time we've had shortages in schools and
no.
And so
before
forth?
Free SHS, the parents pay their fees. So the fees are itemized. You pay. At least you have something to run the school till students go and bring the rest to come and pay. But now, after the summer, everything is from Accra. If nothing comes, you must make sure the school is run. You can't close your school and others are running from their own pockets.
All right. So, what do you tell the children when you can't feed them? How do you communicate? What do you say to them?
We tell them we don't just tell them that there is nothing. We tell them, you see, for the food aspect, we have find a way of getting them food to eat. But because for exams, you get just bringing questions, that you have to get money to buy A4 sheets, tuna, cartridge, and others. So you have to reduce the questions. We tell them to reduce them because you can't afford. But for the food, we don't tell them anything. The only thing is that they go to dine and they get food to eat. You see, let me give you a typical example. The sardines that they print. Formerly, we had 3 fingers or 4. Now it is 2 in the text. And it's supposed to be 3 for each table. When it was 4, at least they had 12 to share. Now they are 2.
And how many students are on the table?
10 students on the table.
I see. Now, let's get back to the money bit, because just this Monday we're told that 154 million has been released to secondary schools under the free SHS scheme. You're saying you've not received that money, it's not hit your account?
Hello, come again.
I'm asking that on Monday we saw a story that says 150 million has been released to secondary schools under the free SHS scheme. Are you saying this money has not hit your school's account? You haven't received any money since...
Boarding schools have received. We have received boarding schools, but these schools have not, because it's meant for perishables.
Okay.
They don't cook, so they have not received anything.
Okay. So let's get some clarification here. You've talked about the perishables and you've talked about administration, for instance. So there's money released for perishables and there's money released for administration. When it comes to administration, help us understand how much is supposed to be released to the school, to be used in administering the school, to be used in purchasing stationery and other things.
Simple. It depends on the number of students you have.
Okay.
So if you have 20 students and government is paying 10 cities for each student, it was not 20 by 10 for administrative. That includes exams, everything, fuel, everything.
Okay. And that is what you say, that no money has been released for the Form 1s?
Yes.
I didn't get that. Come again?
Yes, nothing has been given to Form 1s.
So how are you able to run the school? I mean,
we are managing with whatever we have been given for the second and third years.
So that, does that mean then that what was given for the second and third years is enough to cater for the first years?
My brother, you can't complain. What can you do? You manage with whatever you have.
Well, so that's Headmaster in one of the secondary schools in this country sharing his experience, telling us that, when it comes to the administration of the schools, so far nothing has been given them for the Form 1 students. So they're having to make do with what they have for the Form 2s and 3s. Now, we've done our checks. We've confirmed with the Ministry of Education that, well, that's indeed the situation. And because they have to do a head count, and so they have to make sure that the enrollment figures given them by the schools are indeed those figures that are in the schools. And they've now done the auditing, and so monies will be released shortly. But let's listen also to a student at one of the schools sharing her experience as a student undergoing the free SHS system, particularly the double track in this country.
What you are going through, the specific things you are going through.
Okay, so personally, in class, I have to sit on a broken furniture. I sit on a broken chair. The wheels at the screws at the back of it are not properly tightened, so it just swings me back and forth, disturbing the person behind me and me myself. I can barely pay attention in class, but that's the only chair I can use. And in the dining hall, I feel like we are too crowded in the dining halls and in the dormitories and in the assembly halls. We have to sit tightly packed. And the food in school is very terrible. It goes from bad to worse to sometimes appalling. It's very, very bad.
What food are you given?
We are given beans. For breakfast, we are given porridge. We are given bread. We are given tea. And yes. And for lunch, we are given beans, kenke, and rice. And for supper, we are given rice. It's mostly rice or kenke or yes, mostly rice.
But you always get a meal, right?
Yes, 3 times daily. We always get a meal.
Okay.
Now, when you say your meals have moved from bad to worse to appalling, now what makes you conclude that way? What kind of meals are you given? Why is it bad, worse, and appalling?
Sometimes the meals we are given, for instance, the rice is terribly cooked. I think because they try to manage the food they have, they add excessive water, and it looks like rice water, and I think it's brown rice too. So it looks it's not a beautiful sight when we are served food. It doesn't look right, and it doesn't taste. It has no taste. There's no way you can eat the food that has been served to us. But sometimes they really do, especially when they give us jollof. It's okay.
But this rice that you talk about, that you say is like rice water, is that supposed to be your lunch or dinner?
Supper.
Your supper?
Yes.
And that is watery?
Yes, please. Not watery, but it doesn't look like rice. That's it.
You've talked about broken furniture in your classroom and you not wanting to disturb others. How has that affected you personally, having to sit on a broken furniture?
It's just discomforting to sit on a chair that swings you back and forth each time, and your friend, the person behind you, is always complaining. It's discomforting to be sitting on a chair that just swings you all the time. That's how I feel.
Is any of this affecting your education, your ability to learn?
Yes, I think so, because it doesn't make me focus in class when I'm just being swinged back and forth all the time. It doesn't make me. I lose concentration sometimes, and the teachers usually have to rush through the syllabus so that, because they don't know when we are going to go home. The next time the government is going to announce that we have to go home, so they have to rush through the syllabus, and you're also on a chair which is swinging you to and fro. It's not a beautiful experience.
Now you are in the boarding school, right?
Yes, please, I am.
So you talked about the dormitories, and you said that you think that the dormitories are congested. Describe the conditions in your dormitories.
In my dormitory, for instance, we have 4 beds. It's not a very big room. We have small beds. We have 4 beds on each side, so we have 8 beds. But some of the beds are broken, so I don't have someone sleeping next to me. So I don't usually. I'm not concerned about. I don't worry about the social distancing because I don't have someone sleeping to me. However, I have someone sleeping on top of me, and we are about 15 students in a dorm. I don't know if I did my math right. We're about 15 students in a dorm, and usually when you're in the dorms, they don't have masks on. When you have your mask on, they ask you why you have it on. When you go out to brush to go to another friend's dorm, usually they don't have mask on. They just have it on during classroom hours, and then during school hours.
Now, while you...
Right, so that's a student in one of the schools in this country sharing, the experience when it comes to, being in school. Now, time now for us to look at all of these issues and find out whether it's time to rethink the strategy of implementation when it comes to the free senior high school policy. And this evening we've been joined by a former Director General of the Ghana Education Service and a fellow of the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition, NEC, Charles Aheto Chega. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this discussion.
Great. So you've heard from these. You've heard from a headmaster. You've heard from a student. What's your reaction to these challenges associated with a free senior high school system?
To say the least, I'm very, very disappointed. I'm disappointed because the policy which sought to give so much hope has turned out to be one that has become a nightmare, particularly for the implementers and unfortunately for the beneficiaries. This is something that they have found themselves in a gridlock that they can't get out of. And for me, that's about the worst situation we have found ourselves in this country. Unfortunately, it is becoming increasingly difficult for the policy influencers within the government stream to really come to terms with the reality of the problem and to accept that things are not going the way they are. We are going through a consistent massaging of a fact that everybody knows, but you know it's the same challenge that we are having. You know a problem, you can't talk about it, and you have to just keep quiet and allow it to go. But I think this is just too much for this country. We've gone through a lot of these situations, and it is time, and particularly in education, this is the time when we need a lot of ideas be able to run the system that will ensure that we get the kind of quality that we want to have in the products that we are releasing from our education system.
Now, I mean, you are a former Director General of the Ghana Education Service. You are a fellow of NEC, that's the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. You've been there, you know what the challenges are when it comes to our educational system. When you look at the implementation of free SHS currently, what are the problems associated with the implementation?
Well, the real problems are about the conditions around which the program was introduced. First and foremost, a lot of us were expecting that as much as possible, we will not even depart from some of the existing implementation arrangements that we've had in terms of the running of schools. That arrangement provided that the headmaster was consistently in charge. The headmaster would run the program and would be supervised, and where there are sanctions possible, the headmaster has to endure it. And where there are rewards, the headmaster will endure it. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that we were expecting that the headmasters will manage the feeding aspect. Throughout the history of secondary education, headmasters have managed the feeding situation. Government has come in once in a while to try and interfere, but has massaged it in such a way that the responsibility of the headmaster in terms of managing the inflow and the use of food in the school is properly managed so that the children are well fed. I'll say that yes, there have been some challenges with a lot of schools or some schools where all the students were paying the same feeding cost, but some schools were eating better than others. So there were still arrangements to try and ensure that we get a national menu that will ensure that if every student is paying 3 Ghana cedis, one school will not eat ice cream and another will not also have it at all.
Great. So
if a school is capable of...
Yes, but talking about management, I mean, managing the feeding by headmasters. Yes, I mean, talking about managing the fees by headmasters. Yes, we know that, headmasters, based on the number of students you have, you make requests to the, the Ghana Food Buffer Company, and you're supplied with what you need. So is that not still having headmasters managing the feeding of their students?
Well, I don't think so, because if what I've heard is the practice is that allocation is done at the national level. You give the numbers, and then somebody decides the allocation. And then the time frame also you can't manage. When you run out, you still have to wait for a certain time frame before you get the food. You cannot use your knowledge and your discretion as a head to say, look, I'm running out of sugar. I'm running out of rice, and make sure that there's a backup and all of this. So you are totally on the ground with your supplies, and you know how and what it goes. I listen to the young lady. I mean, if a school is eating soggy rice for rice, then there is a problem. And immediately the headmaster will take steps to ensure that that is not done. I know that in our secondary school, sometimes they cook some very nice jollof rice for us, and we say the tomatoes is too much, and we refuse to eat. Next minute, we are getting a new kind of food. It can't happen now under the current SHS, where students, like this girl said, if the rice is soggy, they must get a replacement immediately. But they can't do it because the headmasters cannot ensure that that is done. So those are the kinds of challenges that occur when headmaster is not fully in charge. But we understand why this arrangement has been put in place, because there's a deep suspicion of headmasters, unfortunately deep suspicion of headmasters, which is undermining the way the school...
Is that suspicion justified?
Well, I cannot say that suspicion is justified. For now, nobody has given any evidence. I know historically that some time ago, we had the opportunity to audit schools and punish headmasters. And we hadn't done that for a very long time. We did it. We found some headmasters culpable, and we punished them. So
if you found some headmasters culpable, could that not be the reason such a decision has been taken to ensure that the feeding is, the purchasing is taken away from headmasters? And let me just say this, because I've seen headmasters actually making requests and saying, well, we need 140 bags of rice from the Ghana National Buffer stock. and these things are supplied to them. Sometimes it may delay, but they are supplied to them. When they are running out, they make these requests. So doesn't that solve the problem that you're talking about?
It doesn't solve the problem. You know what they're saying? There's somebody sitting behind and determining the time frame for when you get what. You are not totally in charge. What if it doesn't come? Because you have not even said that as part of this discussion. Sometimes it doesn't come, and they're talking about delays. They're talking about 20%. The heads of schools are not in charge of the bulk food storage. They are in charge of 20 to 30%, if I heard what Headmaster said, of what is supposed to be the feeding component. And it's supposed to buy tomatoes, salt, and the meat, and all of those things. That is not being in control. No, that's not being in control. Because it becomes very, very difficult to manage the feeding of children when it is staggered in that manner, you know. And we have domestic bases. I mean, the whole management arrangement is structured in such a way that the proper interplay between domestic managers, domestic bases, the college accountant, the headmaster of the school, and the whole feeding structure itself plays so well that you are able to get things done. But this is not the case. This is becoming a very, very serious situation for them,
you are saying,
and they can't even manage it.
So you are saying we should allow the headmasters to be the ones to go out there and purchase everything. Is that what you're saying? We should allow the headmasters and
yes, I'm saying that leave. I'm saying that leave everything to the headmasters. You know, when we were running the Northern Scholarships, the headmasters were only sent the money from the scholarship secretariat for the students who were on the scholarship, and they were, in fact, that amount was mainly feeding. And the headmasters managed it. Did you hear any of these problems coming up in any of the schools?
We heard of delays.
No.
We heard of delays. We had of threats of closing down schools.
Good. That delay was because the money from the scholarship secretariat hadn't hit the schools.
Exactly.
So those were normal. But once the amounts came in, they were able to manage. And note that the schools manage a lot of resources, and they establish what we call a wholesale, where they have some food that is available. And so they manage the food. At the time they start complaining that the money has delayed, it is not the immediate moment at which the money is gone. It takes quite some time, because they would have managed with a lot of their vendors and a whole lot of things, and plug in certain things that the system will not see, and then wait patiently for the delay in the supply of cash. And then life goes on. So once this is gone off, it creates a problem.
Okay.
You don't manage, you are not in charge of the school.
Great. So I realized that in 2018, the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition, now you did some research on the implementation of free SHS. Now, first, what did you find out when you conducted that research, and has the situation changed?
Yeah, let me say that currently NEC is going to go back to find out the current status. But right in 2018, NEC raised a lot of issues. And in fact, interestingly enough, that study was done 1 year after the implementation of the policy. And so there was enough to show for the challenges that had emerged in the implementation. And one of it had to do with the overcrowding in schools, accommodation, where we found out that the dormitories were so tight, there were too many students in the rooms. The sanitation situation in a lot of the schools were so bad that you had too many students rushing for sanitary spaces. You had even the other extension where, because the numbers were high, people were put into hostels, and then they had all these challenges in terms of the harassment of girls and the young learners who were sent to school. So there were a lot of risk. And the classroom situation, that's what the young lady said. You know, from the beginning, headmaster complained about tables and chairs, and he nearly lost his job. You know,
yes.
Schools did not have furniture, and you did not have any way to go about it. And it was very, very, very unfortunate. You know, and you have class sizes that are as high as 100 in classrooms, 50 and above sitting in.
That was in 2018. I mean, it's changed now. It's changed now. That was in 2018. It's changed now. I mean, following the construction of new classroom blocks. So that has changed now. We do know, based on my own checks at the Ministry of Education, that they've procured, furniture. They're about to distribute them. So there's one or two challenges there, but there's been a huge improvement from the 2018 figures. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So those we expect that those changes should come. In the teaching and learning area,
But before you get to the teaching and learning area, let's look at the overcrowding here. And let's look at why that is an important issue. How does overcrowding affect teaching and learning in our schools?
Overcrowding affects teaching and learning in the schools in as much as it prevents a lot of the students to really get quality interaction with the teacher. Because you need a lot of interaction with the students to be able to identify those who have real challenges. When the number is so great, you cannot see through the learners who are having the real challenges, and all of that is masked, and you think that everybody is going along with you. So it's a very, very big problem. And again, for the teacher, it becomes a problem in terms of doing the regular exercise marking and the pressures of having to keep up with the requirements of preparing your lesson notes, getting your students' exercises marked, and coming back to keep correct. So it's a whole threat to the delivery of quality in terms of education in the classroom situation. Now,
talking about teachers being able to mark, and I read your report, you had indicated that it would be appropriate to be giving assignments twice in a week. So for instance, any time you meet students, you give them an assignment. And so why should that be difficult for a teacher to mark when that's his job? You're actually calling you're actually calling for 2 assignments every week. Why should that be a challenge for the teacher when they're actually not doing that?
Yes, they can't do that. Not that they actually are not doing that. They cannot do that.
Well, when I was in secondary school more than 20 years ago, that was not done. We're not overcrowded in our class. That's more than 20 years ago in secondary school. That wasn't done. Yes, so it's not...
Yes, we were not overcrowded.
Yes, but we didn't have such a situation where we had, assignments anytime we went for a lecture or a class. No, that didn't happen. So that's been a norm.
Well, again, it depends on the schools.
Yes, but you're saying they cannot do this, and as a result, it affects the quality of teaching and learning. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it does. It does affect the quality of teaching and learning, because once the lessons are a kind of a practice session that allows the teachers to be able to gauge the pattern of absorption of the children. So once we do that regularly, it makes it easier for us to be able to determine the pace of progress in the classroom. When the numbers are too high, then it creates a bit of a challenge. That is the reality. That is a clear reality.
We'll come back to this.
So it's important that you don't...
Yes, just wrap up on that point so that we go for a break and come back and look at other points that you've been making in your research about free SHS. You're saying that does not help. Yes, continue to make that point.
Yeah, I'm saying that does not help, because then you are not able, as I said already, you are not able to track the general pattern of absorption of the children in the classroom. And it makes it very, very difficult for you to move on in terms of the other levels of learning that the children are supposed to acquire. So that's the real challenge, a real threat to the learning that we require the children to have in school.
Well, my guest this evening is Charles Aheto-Chegan, who is a former Director General of the Ghana Education Service. We're still having a conversation about the free SHS policy implementation. There are lots of calls, for us to review that particular policy and its implementation. So stay with us. When we're looking at other issues, he's talked about, in their report, they talk about the need to have students procuring their own exercise books. They're talking about the construction of dormitories for day schools or place only students within a school's locality as day students. They make lots of recommendations, even including the school placement system. This is Upfront on the JoyNews channel. My name is Winston Anwa. We'll be right back after these messages. All right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us here on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. And tonight our focus still on the free SHS policy implementation. And we're joined via Zoom by Charles Ahetochagan, who is the former Director General of the Ghana Education Service and a fellow of the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. So, yes, we're talking about, instructional, we're talking about overcrowding. But, Mr. Chagan, let's look at it this way. Any teacher worth his salt, being mindful of the fact that you have students from different walks of life in your class, would do everything possible to know those who are gifted, middle, and low-level learners, and dedicate attention to those that need it most, isn't it?
Winston, you're very right.
Yes.
You are very, very right.
So why should there be a problem when that's the teacher's job? That's what you're supposed to do.
Yes, that's true. That's the teacher's job. Let me say that it's the doctor's job to be in the hospital every time. And then once upon a time, even though it's the doctor's job to be in the hospital, did you get me?
There was a bit of a challenge with your connection. I think it's better now. So yes, so go over again. Yes.
So what I said is that yes, everybody knows that in each profession they have a responsibility to be on the job. But I'm saying that in this particular instance, we have not discussed whether the teachers are not on the job. The teachers are on the job, but we are saying that it adds additional pressure to the work that they are doing. And for that additional pressure, these teachers are not even compensated for those months. So then it creates a certain level of agitation and discomfort in terms of what we call job satisfaction. And it is not just a simple process trying to get a child who is not picking up to eventually pick up. It takes time. It takes a lot of man hours to be able to get a group of students to be able to catch up when they are not catching up.
Okay.
It doesn't come easily. And teachers do their best in this regard, and they cannot be doing too much, in terms of the numbers that are imposed on them. Because this could have been very easy if you had a class of 40 marks. Even 40 is quite a big number. But if you want people to be able to participate fully in the classroom, then you want to put them in a situation where the teacher can help them to get the most of what is being taught. And that is not the situation we are getting in the classroom.
Okay, so let's look at another issue, and let's look at the financing model of it, because I've been reading your report, and one of the recommendations you make, why do you recommend a 30% premium for fee-paying category in selected first-class schools? Why do you want people to pay fees? The plan is to have free SHS. You go to school free. Why?
Yes. Again, I want to interview some of the headmasters, and I guess I heard some parents also make a few comments around that. They thought that because the financial resources were not coming in at very regular intervals.
I think there's a challenge with your connection.
The implementation of the program in schools. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now. Yes, I think we can try this one now. Yes, you're making a point because of the financial challenges. Yes, take it out from there.
Yes. So I'm saying. Yeah, all right. So because of the financial challenges that are inherent in the implementation of the policy, that is what is making the request that we should at least charge a certain category of schools. In fact, prior to the free SHS, we had already come up with a certain categorization that would have made it possible for us to literally graduate the payment of the feeding fee, with government providing the additional support in terms of resources to the schools where less than 100% of the school fees are collected. So it was a way.
When you say we have come up with a policy, Mr. Chagan, hold on a minute. When you say we have come up with a policy, who are the we? Is it NEC?
At the Ghana Education Service level, at the Ghana Education Service, we have actually discussed this possibility of staggering the payment of school fees.
Okay. Staggering the payment of school fees. How?
School fees, and
how were you going to do that? I mean, help us understand the details of that strategy. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So So we divided the schools into 4 categories. And we began with the schools that were oversubscribed.
Okay.
And we had about 150 schools. So we classified them as one group. In fact, we were not even category A or B or so. We said that was one group. And then what we call the oversubscribed. Then we had the next group of schools that were very popular following the 150 schools, and we put them also in another group. And then we had the another level of schools which came in, and then the schools in the very rural deprived areas. So we had structured all of those schools, and so we knew the categorization of all the schools. And so we could say that, okay, if there's a high demand for only 150 schools, let parents pay all the full cost for going to that 150 schools.
Okay.
Let's save money so that we can now invest in the other schools that are not overly oversubscribed and use additional resources to bring them up the top, hoping that eventually we'll create a preference for all of the schools in this country, and that situation would come down, and we'll have a system that is so-called fair and allows everybody to study where they are living.
So you were proposing at the time to take away all government subventions for these first group of schools, so that if you want to go there, you pay everything, and those funds will be used to support other level of schools. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're planning to do at the time?
You are getting me deeply into that.
Yes, I want to understand. Yes.
Government will still provide some government will pay some subvention for the students in the schools anyway, because it's their rights. But then in terms of the feeding costs, the feeding cost is what the parents were paying. The feeding cost, which was a so quote unquote a burden on parents, will now be paid by those people who want to go into the so-called 150 oversubscribed schools, and then those who were going to the other schools would then have their fees staggered. And we knew that it wasn't going to create a problem at all.
And which year was this? Which year were you planning to implement this?
Oh, we're talking about 2016, 2017. All through the discussion when the progressively free was coming and the free was, it was all something that we had prepared on the table that we were presenting. But again, when the politicians talk, nobody talks. So you just allow the politicians to have their day.
Are you suggesting that all these brilliant ideas were vetoed by politicians?
Well, we did not even, I don't think we even had the opportunity to even present it, because people were very busy looking at the political dimensions of policies, and therefore they were not paying attention to other views, free and a whole lot of things. So we left it. We left it.
Interesting. But when you look back, I mean, let's stay with this policy a little bit, because it's very important. When you look back, I mean, do you regret the fact that we couldn't take this up? Do you think this would have saved us the challenges we're faced with today?
Oh, yes, it would. It would have done a lot of good to a lot of schools. Parents would have been satisfied, and they will get a lot of results from this thing, from the arrangement. Because the challenge was the fee paying, and we thought that was the best way of minimizing the impact on the children. Because all the other fees that were being paid in the schools were things that were going to the children. So you are buying school uniform, it's your child. You are buying books, it's your child, and a whole lot of those things are your parental responsibility for your child. So we didn't have a problem with that. We knew that parents would be able to manage that. But when it came to the feeding, where many people the amount, we thought that was the one way by which we could have allowed government to make the right impact and then avert some of these challenges. Okay,
so let's go back to the, a premium, a 30% fee paying admission category in selected first class schools. Why do you want this to happen? And, for these first class schools, there are persons who go to these first class schools who also don't have money. They're very intelligent, but they are not endowed to be able to take care of payment. So how does that work? How does that work?
Oh, yeah, that's a very interesting point, because in our plan, Yeah, in our plan, that was actually taken care of. In our plan, that was taken care of, because what we said was that government still had a responsibility for what we call brilliant but needy students.
Okay.
Now, for brilliant but needy students, they will come under a scholarship regime. They'll come under a scholarship regime which will enable government to cover those costs. So we had worked all of that, and we knew. I mean, in our time, people were getting scholarships. We have bursaries. Schools were giving bursaries on an annual basis to students who were performing well, who were coming from very poor backgrounds, and their fees were paid by government. So we thought that we could just take back that policy and make it possible for schools to now recommend individuals who are performing well, but whose parents are having challenges. Okay. So the government would then now have opportunity to provide bursaries for all of these students, for them to continue in the schools where they've been placed. So that was all sorted out, so that we do not have any problems with that situation.
So in effect, you're saying for those who can afford to pay, let them pay. Right? You're saying yes. Those who can afford, let them pay.
Yes.
Let us not make it free for everybody.
Let them pay.
Let them pay. Good.
No.
No, you're saying that for those who can afford and are in these, category A schools or first-class schools, you actually have a 30% premium of them who are a fee-paying option. So the elite in society who can afford should be allowed to pay, and this will be used to support the system, right? Good. And you also make a recommendation about, revising...
That's exactly the
Okay, revising the 70% boarding and 30% day students intake on the free SHS and increase intake for day students. Now, you've also talked about the fact that there's a challenge with dormitories, and there are a lot of persons who have gone to day schools where they do not have places to sleep. You're actually recommending that there be construction of dormitories for day students. So, isn't this a contradiction of your other recommendation?
Yes, it sounds like that, but it's actually the outcome of the way the CSSPS has conducted itself. And if you look in the recommendation, we gave the condition that if you want to post people who do not come from a particular area, into a day school, then provide for them. But what we really would advise is that nobody should go into a day school in an area where he doesn't live. So if you're able to manage that, then you are going to do away with constructing hostels, additional dormitories for people who do not come from the area but are in day schools in those kinds of areas. And that's a problem of the CSSPS. And that we believe can be managed. Okay. And if they take time to look at how the placement is done, and people are made aware that if you come from my village in Gotisalaga and there's a secondary school near Gotisalaga, and you decide that you want to go to Bolga Secondary School, then please go to Bolga Secondary School as a boarder. If you do not qualify, then you go to the school at Gotisalaga and be there. So those are the kinds of arrangements so that you don't unduly put pressure on the system.
Okay. But yes, talking about this particular system, so you're saying we should ensure that students attend schools within their catchment areas. But you also do know, and we've talked about the first-class schools.
You should.
Yes, but we've talked about the first-class schools, and you do know that because of the level of quality in certain schools, lots of people want to go to these first-class schools where they believe they're guaranteed proper teaching and learning. How do you solve that challenge? Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking you.
I say that all of us cannot go to...
Yes, go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah. I say that conundrum that we have to deal with as a country. All of us cannot go... Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I have a little challenge with my... Hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you clearly. Go ahead. I can hear you. Go ahead.
I'm saying that all of us cannot go into the 150 schools. Else we don't need 800 schools in this country. So we can manage that situation properly, which also means that there is a subtle disconnection in terms of the allocation of resources when it comes to the distribution of resources to schools. That is another challenge that we need to look at. if we are able to do some equity in the allocation of resources to schools, we would address this challenge coming forward. So it's not really a problem. There are a lot of schools that are performing very well, and so many people don't know about them. We have tried in so many occasions to help parents to appreciate that, look, a school nearby is a very good school. You can attend it. You don't have to leave Kimoda and go to Infantsman, because you have a great school called Odan Secondary School sitting there. I mean, why do you want to leave Odan Secondary School and go to Infantsman School? For what? Because everybody is performing well in Odan Secondary School. Why do you want to leave Asamankese and go to Achimota? Asamankese is a wonderful school. And so those are the kinds of things most parents do not know. For me, I'm scared to say that there is a certain bit of elitist belongingness that is coming up in the way we choose our schools. Oh no, I went to Wesley Girls, and then your collar is raised. But that is not the point. Majority of the schools are doing very well in this country. I didn't go to any of those 150 schools that are oversubscribed. But fine, here I am. I mean, I've risen through the ranks, and I've been director general and all of that. My school is very proud of me, and I'm also proud of my school. So there are opportunities for people to get education in the places where they are, so that we are able to play down on this elitist and belonging class mentality and ensure that things work out the way they should. And it all has to do with the way we distribute our resources and manage the schools that we consider to be so-called Class B and Class C and Class D and E.
You say students should be allowed to purchase their own exercise books? Why?
Well, again, you see, under the free SHS, it was becoming difficult for students to purchase their own exercise books. Now, what we're saying is that parents should now put money in to buy the exercise books for them.
Okay.
That is not too much. That is not too much to buy. How much is an exercise book anyway? I mean, it's not a big ask.
Well, it may be nothing for you. I mean, it's something for others. I mean, it could be something for others, maybe nothing to you.
Oh yes. So that's why in every situation, in all of the schools, we advocate for a certain system where there is a small quota of books that are available for everybody. If you want an additional one, you buy it, but just be certain. And, we started a program where we wanted parents to buy books for their wards, and we said that if you say you have attended secondary school in this country, you should have a book to show for it. So you cannot say that, oh, I went to secondary school and I never came out buying a book. No. So we introduced a book that all the children are reading. And many of them now own books. They can point it out to you. At the JHS level, they will tell you, I have a book. And the book is called The Cock Crow. I bought it when I was in JHS. And it is theirs. It is their own. They look
have to go.
Some level of pride.
We have to go, Mr. Cheka. But you were Director General of the Ghana Education Service. You've talked about the problems with the computerized school selection and placement system. You were there, you saw these problems. Why didn't you solve them?
Well, thank you very much, Winston. This is an incremental challenge. It emerges on an annual basis. So we had done quite a lot of effort to bring about ensuring some balance in the CSSPS. We realized, albeit, that it will be good to take a second look at the current CSSPS. And for me, I keep advocating that, look, we've tried the headmasters doing their thing. We've tried the CSSPS also trying to give to give students to headmasters. I think this is the time for us to go back to the original arrangement, where we now empower headmasters to do the selection.
Really?
Of the students that come to their schools, that choose their schools, and then discuss. Yes, really. Because currently, the current arrangement of the CSSPS, it is very disadvantageous to a lot of parents.
We have to continue with this conversation. I promise we'll get back to it. That's what time would allow us. Thank you very, very much, Charles Cheka, for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation here on Upfront on the Joy News channel. My name is Winston Amwa. Thank you very much for being part of us this evening. Up next is Joy News Prime. Tomorrow on the Super Morning Show, we have the Director General of the Ghana Education Service and his deputy, joining us to address all the concerns that have been raised when it comes to the implementation of the free senior high school policy. You don't want to miss that. Have a good evening.